The National Park Service emblem is shown. It is shaped like an arrowhead with the silhouettes of a mountain, trees, and a bison. Text reads, "Fishing for answers. Researching Coaster Brook trout at Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore." A bay with red rocky cliffs is shown from above. The cliffs are lined with large green pine trees. A map of the Great Lakes is shown with Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore marked on the southeast edge of Lake Superior. Flowing waves meet the sandy lakeshore lined with driftwood and green pine trees. A rushing river flows as the man speaks.
We're at Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore along the banks of the Hurricane River. It's small in comparison to what you normally think of to a magnificent trout stream, but it has great habitat, and coaster brook trout were the native fish species found in this stream, but were extirpated from the area about the 1900s.
Speckled brown and red brook trout swim underwater. Text reads, Bruce Leischer, Chief of Science and Resource Stewardship, Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore.
And the Park Service, along with the Fish and Wildlife Service and State of Michigan, has been trying to do a reintroduction plan to get a population reestablished.
Two women with fishing nets and buckets walk along the beach.
Collaboration with our partners is key to pulling off any type of project like this, such as Dr. Jill Leonard from Northern Michigan University that has helped with a pretty extensive project looking at the impact of introduced non-native salmonid species into the system and finding out how the fish are doing and if our efforts are successful or not.
Dr. Leonard and her assistant catch tiny fish at the mouth of the river.
And so one of the things that we've really been focusing on is how these native coaster brook trout and brook trout in general have to interact with non-native species. So I think everybody's familiar with the whole issues associated with invasive species, especially here in the Great Lakes.
Text reads, Jill Leonard, PhD, Professor of Biology, Northern Michigan University.
But one of the things they don't often think about is that we have non-native species we don't call invasive, we call them fun to fish for.
Colorful and spotted trout swim underwater.
And so those include things like coho salmon and steelhead trout, brown trout. They were not native to this region, and so once they've been introduced, they now interact with the native species.
They continue netting fish and dropping them into a bucket.
Now we're interested in trying to help those brook trout do well, and specifically the coaster brook trout, and yet now we have new players in the system, and we really need to understand how that may have an impact in our success rate.
Dr. Leonard carries equipment on her back and holds a long pole with a metal end.
Much of what we do is electroshocking, and so that entails going into the streams and to temporarily stun the fish. Then we will try to get information on them, so we'll identify them, we'll measure their length, measure their weight.
Dr. Leonard places a trout on a scale.
So we've actually been working on coaster brook trout and brook trout here in Pictured Rocks for about 11 years. And over that time, we know that the non-native species are having an impact on coaster brook trout, and that it may have an influence on the number of coasters that we see in the streams. And so one of the things that the park is really thinking about is, well, now we know this is an issue. Is there anything that we can do that's still going to encourage the coasters and help them out when we know that it doesn't make sense to remove these non-native species?
She holds a small trout, examining its belly.
So what's the status of coaster brook trout here in Pictured Rocks? When we started the project, we thought they were gone. And then as we got more into it and we started doing telemetry on some of the native brook trout that were present in the streams, we realized that there were coasters after all.
Dr. Leonard and her assistant continue catching fish in the river.
And so there is interest in increasing those numbers. But the trick to it is to find out what's going to do that. Is there a way that we can make these streams more habitable, more appealing? They're going to produce more coaster brook trout.
Bruce Leischer.
Dr. Leonard's research gives us the answers that we need to move forward with the management of this species. I think that one of the biggest successes of the project has so far shown that we have a resident population, a natural population of coaster brook trout.
Dr. Leonard enters data on a computer.
So the resulting data that we get on habitat requirements for this specific species of fish could help us direct some of our management and how we protect our streams.
Dr. Leonard and her assistant walk along the river once more with the equipment.
To me, the lesson is to really pay a lot of attention, to be very careful about what your activities may do, because it's really, really hard to undo a non-native species.
Several non-native trout swim near the sandy beach as credits roll. Produced by Ravenswood Media. Project lead Wendy Smith, Great Lakes Research and Education Center. Featuring Jill Leonard, Bruce Leuscher, Alexis Grow-Rainey, with special thanks to Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, Northern Michigan University, Shedd Aquarium, Dunes Learning Center, and the National Park Service. The National Park Service emblem reappears.